Hello everyone and welcome to the Second Messiah episode 18. In the last episode, in the aftermath of the raid on Ptolemy, Edgar pushed south to attack a Garamantian town out in the desert, completely destroying the garrison but putting himself in a bit of a dangerous situation out on a limb. Roderick was moving westwards towards Ptolemy, destroying some rebels on the way. He needed to get there to stop the Garamantians attacking again, but he succeeded. Edgar, in his dangerous situation, was attacked by two armies, putting him in real danger. The enemy's heavy cavalry penetrated to the centre of his defence, but then Edgar himself destroyed him, meaning the battle went okay. The enemy's second army, though, really pressed hard against a limited number of Gothic troops. Edgar eventually rallied all of his reserves to go and save them. He was too late, but he won the battle with his courageous attack. At Leptis Magna, Vithericus and Guylamer were able to team up to completely overpower the city, and then Guylamer could immediately go on south to attack Garamer, the capital of our enemy. Easily taking it as well, it was poorly defended, and meaning the Garamantians are near destruction. But they had one more army and a fleet heading towards Syracuse, which was undefended. I was forced to really quickly put together a mercenary army in an attempt to defend the town if they make an attack. Now let's continue. It was hard to know what it meant when he took them. I knew it was coming, at least. There were loads of others dying of the plague. It left me with nothing, really. Just the question of what the Lord was expecting me to do. I figured that at least it was a reason to leave Tarentum and do something with myself. Wasn't much worth taking from the house, so I just went down to the docks. I was thinking I would seek out Chief Saphrax and fight for him, but as the Lord would have it, the only boat around was heading for Ptolemaeus. Didn't really feel like waiting, so here I am. Lord Roderick seems like a brilliant man, so I'm happy to do what I can for him. They weren't amazed that I didn't bring any weapons or armour, but I showed them what I could do with a sword, and that seemed to convince them it was worth some old hand-me-downs. So, that's how I got here. Now I'll just work towards the prophecy like everyone else. Perhaps in the new world, God will give our families back to us. Welcome back. It's the Garamantians' turn, and they begin with a desperate attack, that tiny force in the desert besieging my town. Their larger naval force landing by Syracuse but not attacking at first, interestingly. They send an agent down towards their capital, Garama, to harass Guylamer inside there. Not too fussed because they've been harassing him all the way and it hasn't been stopping him so far. Nothing they can do to get their capital back. A small navy moves into the area between Ptolemaeus and Leptis Magna, and an army moves towards Leptis Magna as well, both of which so weak I don't really care about them. But here's an interesting situation. The landed force near Syracuse is able to go into the attack now. The balance bar is about even thanks to that hastily assembled mercenary army, but my men have typhoid fever, the garrison and the ships do at least, which is reducing their morale on the battlefield, which isn't going to be too helpful. But since this is a balanced engagement and I'm going to have the defensive advantage, I'm hoping that won't make too much of a difference. So here's the battlefield. I've got my men facing the enemy's primary direction of attack from the south. They didn't split their forces up at all, which makes life easy. I've got my two ships at sea who I'm immediately going to land on the beach to the enemy's flank. The downside to this plan is the enemy's many onagers can immediately start firing at them. Luckily for me, their key opening shots miss the boats, the second shot here missing as well, so these men can just jump off the ships onto the beach, and now I've got these little units right round the side of the enemy's force who can walk up in fact towards the onagers to take revenge. The bulk of their army is just running right at us in two groups, one full of heavy swords, one of heavy spears. I've got two units of medium spears in front of the tower in an attempt to defend against them, and more units further back. I'm doing another multi-layered defense. My cavalry are sneaking around the enemy's army, going along the beach, attracting the attention of some of the enemy's ranged units, including the onager, which gets some decent hits on them. But now that they're back behind the enemy's army, those onagers, which the enemy left completely undefended, are going to be completely annihilated by this cavalry attack, so we'll dispatch all of the onagers before they can fire the majority of the ammunition, which will make life a lot easier for me defending, since I want to be defending static positions. So their forces are now going to impact mine here at the front. They've got slingers softening me up, and they're going to have a little bit of advantage actually because they can charge downhill into my line. This terrain isn't very good for defending on. The Comitatensis spears, my Roman forces, are going to face the brunt of their attack. These Roman forces can't form a spear wall, they have no special formation, so they're not going to be particularly good at holding against this onslaught of enemies who pretty much immediately break through them, as you can see. But the forces who do break through are being pelted by hurlers on a barricade further back. Those hurlers will probably be inflicting friendly fire on me as well, but hopefully it will kill more of the enemy, and the sacrifice of the Comitatensis spears will soften up the enemy enough that the units behind them can hold on. I'm also using archers back there to rain arrows onto this blob of troops, hopefully mostly killing enemies. So the onagers are now dispatched. The enemy sent a unit of swords back to try and fight with my cav, but isolated like that I could just attack them from all sides, and the marines from the boats were also able to lock them down and fight them while the cavalry did to make things extra easy. The enemy are now smashing through my spear line here. The Germanic spears lasting a little bit longer because of their special formation, but not going to be able to stop the enemy. The tower at least is doing some good damage to the enemy. That's why I wanted to stop them here. So I've achieved my objective as far as that's concerned, but still the enemy are going to be breaking into my inner defensive position now. These swordsmen were distracted, wanting to fight the barricade, and as a result, the archers on the wall behind them are going to pepper them with arrows. If only the archers were better, this would have been a devastating move, but unfortunately, they're not very good at killing these guys, so slowly we reduce the number of this unit, and they just stand there for so long that once we've used up most of our ammo, we'll be able to kill them. So the rest of the enemy's forces are going to storm in. Since they're mostly spears, my cavalry can't really help, but the cavalry will be able to destroy the enemy's skirmishing units who they left behind, so that's just going to weaken their army and overall reduce the morale of the men inside. The enemy's general made a very generous move for me by rushing into the center of my defensive position where I had these pikes. They were actually chasing the archers. You can see I've been drawn back out from behind the pikes into combat because they're not very intelligent. So I'm going to try and get the archers out the way, and the pikes can then engage with the enemy's general, which of course will cause a lot of casualties, especially because I have the Legio Comitatensis behind throwing darts over the top. We're taking them down. So the enemy general is killed in that particular fight, and the pikes are immediately having to re-engage with the spears who are following up behind them, but that shouldn't be a problem. We've got a nice defensive position there. My cavalry are hunting down some swordsmen and are now going to rush into the town while the enemy's spears have been distracted fighting with my main line. Here comes a second unit of those spears pressing against the pikes. My pike wall is really disorderly and too thin to really fight, but the enemy have taken losses already, so they're not going to be too much of a challenge to deal with here. They will beat the pikes with their overwhelming numbers, but of course I have plenty of reserves still to deploy against them. More enemy swords were sneaking around to the south, where I had axemen and falxmen prepared to counterattack the enemy. Here my axes come out, the enemy turn around the second they see the axes, perhaps hoping to run away, but the axes quickly rear attack them, and they're attacked in the front by brigands with this cavalry charge, so this unit of Legio is going to be completely annihilated very quickly here. More legionaries just further on here, also being attacked by cavalry. If they stay around too long, my falxmen will reach them, but at this point the enemy's whole army chain routes. They've taken too many losses across the board and everyone starts running away. These spearmen here trying to escape from the main position are going to struggle because the archers on the wall will continually fire at them, plus I've got cavalry coming in to wipe them out as they attempt to escape, so we're going to deal a lot of casualties to the enemy in this rout, quickly resulting in a decisive victory for the defenders. So it was very lucky that I sprung up with that mercenary army to fight this, because now the Garamantians have lost their most powerful military force. Syracuse is safe. This war appears to be coming to an end. Thank the Lord they were repelled. I can't imagine what they would have done to our people if they had overpowered those sellswords. And just as well, for I don't think I could manage another trip at sea. The lease of life God granted me to aid my king's campaign is coming to an end. Or perhaps he had brought it to an end for me, seeing that I have done all I need to ensure the success of his son. Sorry, I forgot. I will not talk of death any longer. I only dwell on it because there's little talk of life left for me. I do not even have a son to wish well in the future. Well, there is Edgica, but I think he has trouble enough with his real father, let alone me. Let's try to go for another walk. Time to see the results from the battle at Syracuse. The enemy's army in terrible condition. Our army all holding on, the garrison taking a lot of losses, the brunt, but not going to be a problem. There aren't going to be any more battles around here anytime soon. I decided to ransom and release the captives to get money, since I don't need to regenerate either the garrison or this mercenary army, which I intend to disband as soon as possible. Immediately afterwards, the tiny band of Garamantians attacking Orgula here decides to go for a very, very dangerous siege assault where they have a massive disadvantage. The AI seems to have miscalculated this one. I'm going to take an aggressive stance to send my melee units out to fight with the enemy because they have an onager out there, so a protective stance might actually result in more casualties than an aggressive one. The enemy are wiped out, needless to say, in a heroic victory for the garrison forces, and once again I'm going to use ransom and release to get me some more money off this because I don't foresee the town being attacked again. Couple of rebellions starting at the beginning of the next turn, always good to see, but they should be easy to fight, and there's news of hostile agent activity, and 2 enemy generals killed. The Garamantians are getting really thin on the ground here. One of the rebel armies is over there east of Ptolemais. We're going to have to send Roderick back to fight it. I was just looking at the garrison to see if it was strong enough to hold off the Garamantian fleet to the west. It almost definitely is, so I know I can go and fight them, but I want to just leave them for a moment so they can get stronger, and then I'll go and fight them in a future turn. We've got Gaetulian forces off to the southwest of Garama, who are going to have to deal with fortifying out there, which could be difficult. Another rebellion near Egica, and Vithericus has Garamantians coming from the west. So we need to try and resolve all of these threats all over the place so we can start building up our new territory and getting it under control, perhaps stopping some of these rebellions. Vithericus pushes the Garamantians away and they disappear out of sight. While I was there, I had the opportunity to rebuild the town that had been desolated in the area. I had so much money that I decided I might as well, because having the town constructed will help with the management of Leptis Magna, which is currently on its own. So I'm going to expend pretty much half of Vithericus' army to construct that town and a massive amount of money, and even now it's going to take more time to reconstruct the buildings before the settlement actually becomes useful. The upside is that taking it reveals the Garamantian army. It's not very strong at all. I don't really need to worry about it. Egica has rebels right next to him, as you can see there, so I'm going to let them build up as well to improve public order and then just go out and slaughter them. Amalric, I think this is Amalric II, moving on the Gaetulian capital and seeing there's nothing there, tells me that if I attack them, I can end my war with them as well. They were the allies of the Garamantians. The mercenary forces in Syracuse are going to chase the surviving Garamantians on the island away. We can easily destroy them in order to resolve, and of course it doesn't really matter if we take losses in this situation because these men are going to be thrown off the payroll the second the battle is over. So we destroy yet another officer, yet another army of the Garamantian kingdom, and that means that this army has pretty much fulfilled its purpose, so I can now start throwing these guys off the team in order to improve my income. I thought though I'm going to keep the onagers. I captured those onagers from the Garamantians in the battle at the city, and they're always useful to have around, so I'll keep those guys and the general and just sit them in the town just in case I need to spring up a reserve army once again. The Gaetulians come to me offering peace and a decent sum of money as well, but the only deal I'm willing to accept is if they become my tributary state, because that's the only way I can assert my control over Africa, the control I need to fulfill God's plan. They reject that offer, unfortunately. Then we see the Garamantians cheekily colonize Macamades there, which is actually very useful. We'll be able to exploit that in a moment. Then my Illyrian allies, who hate me as you can see, ask me to join a war against the Huns. Hoping to get back in on their good side, I decide to agree in exchange for a small payment, and we'll see if there are any consequences to the Huns now being at war with me. I haven't seen them in a long time. So we've now got more armies to deal with. We've got rebels all over the place, and I've decided it's time to finally start reducing their strength. Saphrax can move out with his powerful army to wipe out the nearby rebels, who have a very cavalry-heavy force as far as we can see. I don't know where they're getting all of these expensive high-tier Roman units, but they're dead now. So public order has been improved. Saphrax has gained experience for himself and his army, and now he can just sneak back into Hadrumentum, which actually now starts gaining public order, so we've stabilized that area. So here's that Garamantian force colonizing Macamades. It looked like Roderick could go and capture it off them, but I needed him really to stay in Ptolemais so he could head over to fight the rebels whenever he needed to. So instead, I thought I'd try and use Vithericus to do it, but first he's got an army right in front of him that he can engage. Even with his massively depleted force, the enemy army runs away because I think they're even more depleted, and they ran quite near to Edgica, so I realised that he could sneak out and fight that battle later on, so Vithericus doesn't need to pursue, especially because he would take attrition if he did. So instead, he's going to rush to Leptis Magna. That means next turn he'll be able to head east towards Macamades if the Garamantians are still there, and destroy that fleet and of course capture the town without having to pay to colonize it, which is brilliant. Edgica then moves out to destroy the small Garamantian army near him. Again, a quick auto-resolve will deal with them in this situation. He'll have to head straight back because he needs to sit in the town to stop the rebels if they were to make a move. Unfortunately, we lose 2 squads of Falksmen. It seems Edgica was too aggressive in his tactics, but that's not going to be a huge deal. They are replaceable. But unfortunately, in this particular province, I can only recruit Comitatensis spears, who aren't particularly good, but I'm going to do so anyway just to bolster out the numbers in case there's a battle and to improve public order. Moving on, we get sudden news that we need a new general in the Children of Uim, and that can only mean one thing. Loss is a strangely sobering experience. It suddenly restores lost memories of the past. Saphrax had been the foundation of my life for the longest time, the man from whom I learned everything good I ever knew in my old life. But he was not just the mentor to your king. For many of our folk, many who we know and love, he was the king. He took on the role where it seemed I had failed during my time in the desert, leading our stray children to safety and earning the respect of the Romans he welcomed into his arms. He was the wisest of our sages, the most distinguished of our warriors, the Messiah to the Messiah. He was a true servant of God, but also showed the infinite compassion of God himself in his devotion to making the current world as peaceful and as safe as God will make the new one. As a result, every man and woman in this world has heard his name, heard of the lands he had toiled to save from chaos, heard of the insurmountable challenges he had conquered. When we look back from the reborn world on the journey we took, we will remember that there were 3 men who defined the course of history: the sons of God, and Saphrax the Great. That's right, Saphrax has died of old age and now needs replacing. I'm going to use Visimar, a minor noble. All of the experienced nobles are currently being used, but I might switch them in so I have a better commander for the Children of Uim before they start their next campaign. As we go through the bad news, we get the confirmation: death by natural causes for Saphrax, a man for whom it was unlikely he would reach the age to die of natural causes, so in many ways his life has been a success to get so far. Now that colony the Garamantians made for us at Macamades is completely open for the taking. You can see the small fleet defending it has left, so Vithericus can just move over and kill the one general sitting there. He must have been the governor of this colony, still under construction, so we'll just take them down. I believe that's the Garamantians' current king, although being Garamantian king these days doesn't mean much, because you just get killed on your first day of office, like this man did. A decisive victory is won, so we've now captured Macamades, effectively recolonizing it without having to pay the vast number of troops and money into it to make it happen, so it's very good of the Garamantians to have done this for us. We'll have to start constructing the buildings, so it'll be a while before it's any use, but still, an excellent development. Leptis Magna has enough troops to defend against that tiny fleet if it were to attack, so I'm not worried, but the settlement up the coast doesn't, and that's where Edgica's going to have to come in. First, I attacked the rebels. If they had stood and fought, I probably could have wiped them out there and then, but they ran away. I would take attrition if I chased them down, so I don't really want to, although if I leave the area, those rebels could easily take the settlement. However, I realised that Gailamir is probably safe to leave Garama. Because the city walls will stop any assaults for one turn, I can move him out to defeat these rebels. The balance bar is pretty far in our favour, so I'll just auto-resolve that. So by defeating these rebels, that means Edgica is freed up. What I'm hoping to do is move him north so that he can defend the coastal settlements against that tiny Garamantian fleet in case it gets up to no good. So Geilemir wins that easy victory. The problem for him now is that he's stuck in the desert and has to take attrition wherever he goes. I decided I'd try and move him north because he'll take the minimal attrition to get back to town where he can regenerate troops. He's already looking pretty damaged, and as he makes that small movement, he becomes yet more damaged. Still, Edgica, now freed up, is going to be able to move. Unfortunately, he can't move all the way up to the town, so that Garamantian fleet could take it. There's no garrison in there, of course, because it's still under construction, so they could just completely take it off us and stop themselves from taking attrition as well. So it's especially in their interest right now. So Edgica is just going to get as close as he can. If the enemy do take it, I can immediately take it back, and if I'm extremely lucky, his closest point will be in reinforcement range, although I don't quite think it is. Now for Roderick, we're going to start moving east, abandoning Ptolemais, which is safe with its garrison, to go and defeat the rebels who've sprung up here. That rebel army is looking pretty powerful, but it still retreats before Roderick's advance. I can't chase after it, but at least I don't need to right now, because the rebels are going to take attrition, and Roderick can just chase them down next turn without much consequence. The Gaetulian army near Garama moves towards Leptis Magna, not the move I expected, but that's fine by me. We can tell what they're doing, it should be easy to defend against them. And the Garamantians just run away, so it looks like I didn't need to be so worried about moving Edgica into position. We get a political obstruction. Someone's trying to stop Geilemir from gaining a position, and he's actually starting to become disloyal, as you can see there. Only 3 out of 10 loyalty, so Vitericus is going to step in to force Geilemir into that position, which should improve his loyalty as well, seeing that Vitericus is on his side. That Gaetulian army that was moving for Leptis Magna has only tiny amounts of integrity and not that many troops either, so it's going to be pretty easy for me to just garrison the city with Vitericus and actually hope that they make an attack, because it would for them be suicidal. I have called you here today, my warriors, nobles, friends, my trusted allies, and my hardy men, to share with you the news of the scourge that plagues these lands so. I, your king, Sabrakamani, I have had contact with these Goths and offered them peace. Peace, yes, so that the men of God together might work the land and make a new heaven on earth in these chaotic times. Some of you called me traitors, I know. I forgive you. I offered them gold even, so that there would be no more bloodshed. It served to test their words as well, their own honesty, their morals, and supposed righteousness. But my men, they seem content to deny the offer. This shows them as the demons they are. They wish to conquer like wild beasts under the command of that false prophet that surely is a spawn of hell. As I am an honest man, I shall tell you that these men will fight with crazed strength, but their belief in their Messiah is also their weakness. One defeat is all it will take for their morale to be shattered. Should he fall, or any of the righteous leaders fall, they shall quickly be made to see how they are not invincible, and better yet, it shall show the rest of the world the same. The Goths shall be purged in the true light of God. This I shall show you. We shall have war. In the next turn, we discovered the Gaetulians didn't actually move at all, so that made life quite easy, though it's unfortunate to not get a chance to destroy them. They can't do any damage to us though, so it's okay to just leave them standing there with their little army and start planning our next move. In particular, Edgica can move west and consider making an attack on the capital of the Gaetulians, Dumidi, to the west. Plenty of attrition on the way, so it's going to be a quite dangerous march to get there and even take a few turns. For now, he's just going to sit on the edge of our territory and wait to get his movement points back. The forces in Syracuse are going to re-garrison the city, having finished off all the rebels there previously. But we've got more rebels over near Caralis, where we're going to have to raise up another force in order to stop them from taking the town. The rebellion's already got 8 units. So we're going to have to hope we can get a decent number of mercenaries here in order to bolster the garrison, which will just be a few units strong. We do have the walls on our side, of course, making it hard for the rebels to attack, but rebels usually come with plenty of onagers and siege weapons, so it's not going to be as great a defensive advantage as it would be against a regular army. Still, we've got a decent force put up there, so hopefully the rebels won't be able to take it. On the subject of rebels, Roderick is now able to kill the rebels who are near him. They've continued to build up their force for a long time, but it's still nowhere near his power on the balance bar. Surprising, actually. I thought they probably had a better chance than the balance bar gave them there, but of course I'm just going to use that to annihilate them. So that's a decisive victory for Roderick. He'll take on the prisoners to restore his forces and go back to garrison the town, which will now start stabilising in terms of public order, all the rebels gone, and people generally getting okay with the Goth ruling Africa. As we move on, we notice that some Roman activity over in one of the Mauryan cities, Caesarea. You can see we've got a Western Roman Empire army raiding, we've got Western Roman separatists doing something there as well. We'll take a closer look at that in a moment. We also get called into a war by my ally, the Gepids, the guys right back at the Goth starting position who I've been allied to the whole time. They're being attacked by one of the eastern kingdoms. I don't think there's any problem with me joining this war, although it does mean I'm now at war with pretty much everyone in the east there. Still, I don't think there'll be any consequences. The Gaetulian army moves deep into the desert, a very annoying position to hunt it down because I'll take a lot of attrition if I want to go over there and fight them. And the Garamantian fleet seems to come back towards our direction. Not sure what they're up to, but we're going to have to defend our weak colonies. We've also got Mazoon forces hanging around as well, who look like they're going to bother the Saxons. Looking at the bad news at the start of the next turn, we see that Theudis has died of natural causes as well, only 53 this time. Theudis was the governor of Nova Uium, not a huge military problem, but he was helping out over there, so I may need to replace him. A shame to have lost yet another of our starting officers, and Geilemir has gained some loyalty as a result of Ethericus' help with getting him into a position in the hierarchy, so hopefully that'll stop him from having any ideas and being too annoyed about Ethericus passing off all the boring duties to him. Now with the Gaetulians, what I wanted to do is try and use Amalric to stop the army from moving so that I can attack it without it just running away into the desert and causing me even more attrition. I'm going to give it a go, but unfortunately the enemy agent has destroyed all of my movement points, so I'm not going to be able to do that now, so I'll just have to have that plan in mind for the future. Egica is going to begin his march towards Demidi. It was such a dangerous march actually that I thought I really didn't want to do it if I didn't have to. I'd rather just bypass it and go on towards Caesarea. So I thought I'll bring up diplomacy and just see if they'd be my tributary state, considering they're very weak. As far as I know, they just have one army that's very depleted, but they're not going to be my tributary state. So we're going to have to march on that capital. Egica's going to take a decent number of losses on this march. It's attrition pretty much the whole way, and it's going to be multiple turns of marching through attrition. I wouldn't be surprised if he arrived with only half of his forces alive, but that will of course be enough to take it, and then he can get those forces back once he's garrisoned. So here's his area again. You can see you've got a Mauryan army inside defending against the Western Roman separatists, while the regular Romans are raiding in the area. I don't know if the separatists and the regular Romans are at war with each other. They also control Carthage here. So soon I think I'm going to be at war with that separatist faction in order to take those territories. But for now, I want to finish up against all the African kingdoms. The rebels didn't attack during the end-turn sequence, so I'm going to hire more mercenaries up here in Caralis and actually start recruiting regular forces because there are no more mercenaries to get. So if the enemy are going to withhold their attack, I'm going to try and get as strong as possible before they get a full stack and make it. Helping me out in defending Caralis is the Visigoths. They have a fleet just outside the city that lands, seemingly to defend it from the rebels. We'll see if this generous move from my ally pays off in the next episode. Finishing up our wars in Africa, trying to bring peace to our new lands and planning our next move in the next episode of The Second Messiah.